Alrighty. Good morning. My name is Kyle Houchins. I'm a tech and a trainer for McNeil, and I do tech support and do training and webinars, things like that. We do these getting started videos fairly regularly, once a month or so. And the whole idea of this is to have kind of an interactive session where we can um, build something in about an hour, hour and a half, maybe two, depending on how things go. And the idea is to kind of have a conversation between myself and the folks who have showed up and talk a little bit about how to build something from scratch. And these are a little different than a lot of software demos that you may have seen. What I typically do is either the night before or sometimes the morning of, just do a quick sketch of some things that I'm thinking about building. And then we go through and we build them live. These are unrehearsed. I don't practice them. And the idea behind it is to basically put myself in the same position as you would be if somebody walked into your office and said, here's something, I need you to build it. And how would you do that? And how would you think through it and go from there? Um, so there's often, we'll run into blind alleys, or I'll go down a path that doesn't work, and we'll stop and talk about that and what happened and why it went wrong and how to fix it, which I think is kind of the important variable in these things, is to not necessarily be a sales tool for Rhino and say, look at how perfect the software is, because anybody who does this for a living knows that it doesn't matter how great the software is, and Rhino's pretty great in my opinion. There is stuff that you run into that just is going to cause you problems, and so I like to try and focus on those issues and try and work through them together, and sometimes with great success, and sometimes with some difficulty. If you remember the hammer video I did about a year ago, that one went right into the wall. But that's life. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about my setup here. If this looks different than your Mac Rhino setup, then what is possibly going on is that I am set up in the Windows theme. So if we go up here to settings, and preferences, and we go to themes down here, I'm set up Rhino for Windows. I primarily use Rhino for Windows, and so when I come over to the Mac side, I like to have the same kind of setup. I like the tabs at the top and stuff like that. It makes me feel safe and warm, so I use the Rhino for Windows setup on mine. You can use either one, the Rhino for Mac, or you can set up your own custom, which would be a blend between the two. This requires a restart if you change this, so it's just the next session that you start up will have the different theme if you change from that, but this is why I'm running Rhino for Windows. A few little differences between the Mac and the Windows side. We have these little drawers over here which turn the toolbars on and off, and same thing over here. Which makes it really convenient. You can set up hotspots on the edges of the screen. That's a Mac OS function. I don't have those set up. I find them a little distracting because I tend to work at the edges of the screen sometimes, and I find that a little disturbing, so I don't run that. But I do start almost every model with an image, and like I said, I usually try and do a little scribbly sketch before I start these things. And so let's place that using the picture frame command, and I've got an image on my desktop, and what we're going to build today is basically a series of little knobs and buttons and switches and stuff like that. And basically what I kind of wanted to simulate is you do a little thumbnail brainstorm session, you pick a few that you want to explore and then develop them in 3D. And the reason that I like doing that is because Rhino for me is fast enough that I can do a sketch in about, maybe 5 minutes. I didn't spend much time on this, as you can clearly see. you know, 4 or 5 minute sketch, come up with some ideas, have a little conversation with myself, and then jump into a 3D environment and actually design this stuff in real space. And so the decisions that you make about the aesthetics happen for real, as opposed to a sketch where you can kind of lie, cheat, and steal and make everything look wonderful, even though, you know, it doesn't kind of jive with reality sometimes. So I'm going to take this thing, because this is not set up. This is not a 4-view orthographic or anything like that. This is just a thumbnail noodly sketch. I'm going to take this thing and kind of park it over here out of the modeling space and use it for reference, but I kind of am not going to build over it because it's not really set up for doing that. And the first one I'm going to focus on is this one right here. And this one is actually kind of an interesting little exercise, because it's the whole idea behind this thing is it's really soft, right? And so doing that kind of stuff can sometimes be a little bit more complicated than building sharp edge stuff like this that's, you know, clearly trimmed and clearly filleted and stuff like that. When we start doing blendy stuff that's kind of soft, that's a little bit more complicated and a little bit more interesting to model. So I'm going to start with this one, and then depending on how much time we have, we'll build a few more of these. Maybe we'll build this guy over here, because there's actually kind of a cool workflow to do that. Maybe we'll build this guy or one of the other ones, or we'll go from there and see what happens. So let's take this right off the bat, and let's pick this and let's move it to a different layer so that we can have it on a layer and we can lock it. And that way it's not, you know, it's not something that we accidentally grab when we're modeling, and go from there. And this shape, if we take a peek at it, right, it's got a little domed top on it. Maybe there's a label under a clear lens. And then it's got a little return here, and then maybe this breaks a little bit, and this is soft, and then it makes a soft turn here, and it makes a soft turn here, and then it has this little barrel at the bottom, right, where we have a threaded rod poking out. And I'll show you a cool trick for how to do threaded stuff. The trick is to never model it. We steal it from McMaster Carr, and that's actually a pretty fantastic resource that I'll show you. So the first thing I want to talk about is corners and NURBS. And if you've done NURBS modeling for a while, maybe you've kind of discovered this, maybe you already know it, but there's a surprising number of people, when I talk to them about it, they don't understand this concept. And basically, it's NURBS corners require 3 points, right? If I turn the points on for this thing, and so I've got 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point here, right? And if I move this point closer, it changes. Now my dog's going to bark. Hang on, let me shut the door so she doesn't bother us. If you come to many of these webinars, my dog makes a frequent appearance in these. That's Lucy, the 3D modeling pit bull. So if we're going to make a shape in another direction, right? 1, 2, 3. So we've got, and I turn the points on for this. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Now, if I do this with a single curve, I go 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want to start going down, I can actually steal this point and use it as one of my 3. So I can start coming down here, 2, 3. Now I can steal this one again, and I can come up here, 2, 3. But the structure is the same. So my corner is 1, 2, 3. My corner is 1, 2, 3. My corner is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right? So it's always in 3s. Now, if we want to be able to isolate these, right? Because I had to steal this point in order to make this corner, and I also have to steal this point to make this corner, right? They're kind of related. I have to isolate them. So that means I have to go 1, 2, 3, and then I need another point, 1, 2, 3. And then I need another point, 1, and then I need, so that's that one, then I go 1, 2, 3, okay? So when I turn this on, now I've got 3 points here that make this corner, 3 points here that make this corner, and I can adjust it by pulling these closer together, farther apart, but I can also adjust the sharpness of the corner by pulling these points closer to the middle, right? Or I can soften it by pulling them farther apart. And this is going to be an important thing to understand because the way this thing is built, basically we've got a corner, we've got a soft corner, we've got a soft corner, we've got a corner, and we got to isolate this from the next one, right? So I've got to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So I got to have 3, 6, 9, 12. I got to have about 12 points in order to make this thing happen. And I did this video yesterday, so for the Windows side, so I have a little bit of a cheat built in already. And I know that I want to, when I revolve this thing, I want to have 49 isoparams in order to be able to get 6 divots in this thing. That's the way it worked out yesterday. So I'm going to spare you watching me do math, which is a painful process for all involved, and we'll just go from here. So let's start. I'm going to start at 0 just because it's easy, and I'm going to come out a little bit. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that because I want to get this bulge in here, right? So I'm going to start with a straight line, and maybe we'll turn on grid snap up here, and we'll start maybe here to here, and then I'm going to turn grid snap off, and then I'm going to mirror this around 0. And this is a nice way to make bulgy stuff. And I'm going to use a 3-point arc because that one is super easy to use. So I'm going to snap it here and here. And then I know my center point is lined up right on the middle. So then I can decide like how much bulge do I want this lens to have. And I want it just to have a little bit. So I'm going to just pull it kind of something like this. Now I'm going to go back to control point curve, and I'm going to snap to here. I'm going to shift drag out from my first point. Now I got to make my first corner, right? I got to make this roll right here. So I'm going to start placing, maybe I'll do it close. 1, 2, 3. That's my corner. Now I'm going to come straight down to about here. 2, 3, that's my corner. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to snap to the midline here. All right, so that's my shape. And I'm going to set up a center line just to have it in place because it's nice for trimming, especially with revolved stuff. Use the trim command to get rid of this. And I'm just going to get rid of that because I don't need it anymore. And so now I've got the shape of my object, right? And I can decide, do I like this shape? Do I want to turn it? Do I want to adjust it a little bit by moving this point? Maybe I want to sharpen that a little bit. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to soften it a little bit. I can do that here. All right, so that 1, 2, 3 formula allows us to be able to really focus on these corners and get them, dialed in the way that we want it to be. And I'm going to really soften this thing up a little bit. Join this up. And then let's revolve it. Let's go to perspective view. And we'll just use the revolve command down here. And we'll snap from here to here. And then I want to just use a full circle. So I'm going to just roll this around like that. And this gives us the basis of what we want to mess with. Now, this is a poly surface, so I can't turn points on. If I try to turn points on for this, it's going to say, can't turn points on for poly surfaces. See this down here? So I have to explode this, and I have to work on just this part. So I'm going to isolate that. And if we turn the points on for this, you'll see that I don't really have enough points to mess with. So let's run the rebuild command. And let's rebuild this thing to 49. And then let's run it in the other direction. I need to dip down, so I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, and then I got to come over. So I'm going to have another one, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go about 12 points in that direction. And let's preview it to make sure that it did what we wanted to do. So that looks correct. So let's go ahead and rebuild it. I'm going to delete the input, And now, oh, went degree 1. Don't want that. Let's rebuild that. Have to change the degree to 3. Otherwise I get facets, and I don't want facets. So let's preview that. That looks better. Let's rebuild that. All right, so now we've got enough points to work with, right? I've got stuff that I can play with now. And so now what I want to do in the top view, I want to determine kind of where, let's get a point set up right on the origin. And actually this one here, this line of points is set up right on the origin, and that's actually the seam. And I don't want that seam to be the origin because I don't want a seam to be running through the center of my object. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but there's a command called surf seam that you can actually move this seam anywhere you want. So if I put it over here, the seam moves from here to here. Sometimes that's useful in case you have to trim something through a closed surface. But I'm not going to worry about that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to rotate it so this row of CVs is directly on one of these, because that's going to allow me to be able to do some correct counting. So I'm going to rotate from 0. I'm going to snap to this point, and then I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to align that. Because now what I can do, this is now my symmetry point. I can go, 1, 2, 3. That's my center. 1, 2. So I can get like 5 points in this direction. But I'm gonna go a little farther. So I'm gonna pick these guys, and I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3 past the center point. So 1, 2, 3 over here. And then if I go to the top view, you can see that I've got these guys all selected, right? Now I'm gonna deselect these guys because I don't want to mess with those up there, and I don't want to mess with these down here. So now I can go into perspective view, and I've got enough stuff that I can now start sculpting with this. And it looks like I missed a few. So let's go to wireframe, make sure I've got the ones that I want. Looks like I missed a few. So let's do this. I'm going to drag select all of these, make sure I get them. And then I'll deselect in a different view. That looks better. Go back to shaded view so we can see what we're doing. Now we've got everybody selected. So now what I can do is I can just pull this straight down and add my soft little pillowy shape in there. And I can tune the design of this thing by grabbing these points. And if I deselect these guys, I can just grab one row of isoparams right here, right? So I can do cell V, and it selects everybody in that row. And then I command drag to get rid of these because I don't want to mess with those. Now I can scale this, and actually I'll do the same thing here. Get those, and then I'll command drag. The cell V and cell U are really useful for this kind of stuff. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the scale tool to scale those polygons in or out. And you can see how the shape of this and the softness of this is starting to change. If I want it to be a little rounder, I can pull these together. If I want it to be a little squarer, I can pull these out. And I would it probably would make sense to grab all of these guys in here. But I kind of like the ability to be able to just play with the corner ones. Maybe not. Let's see. Let's play with it a little more and see what we get. So let's grab these. And I'm not doing this over the entire model. I'm just doing this in a section because we're going to copy this. And so now I can scale this and see how that sharpens up, how it softens. Maybe I like the bottom one to be a little sharper. But the top one I want to be a little softer. something like that. Maybe a little farther in. Oop, looks like I've got two selected down here. I don't want those. So let's deselect those. And these. There we go. Let's pull that down a little bit, make that nice and soft. So that kind of does about what I want it to do, right? So let's go back to our front view. Got to make a nice grippy knob, right? So let's go back to our front view and let's talk about how to work on this thing a little bit. So if I decide that I want, let's start with a straight line, and let's divide this up so that we can trim it and then array the thing and pull it all back together. So let's say I wanted 6 of these guys. Let's go to transform array polar. That's the center of the array. I want 6 of these. Actually, I want 12 of these. And we're going to go all the way around. And so you can see these lines, right, are kind of my steps. If I wanted to get 6 of these, right, 2 of these are going to equal one of these, one little grip area. And it looks like I went a little far out here, because this is going to be a weird transition if I do 6 of these things, right? We can visualize this to see what it's going to look like. If I drag and hold down Command, I can isolate that kind of with some surfaces and see. And I don't like how close this is. So I went out one row of CVs too far. So let's fix that. So let's go back into wireframe. Let's pick this row. Oops, it's on, sorry. Let's pick this row and this row, and we'll go cell V. And then we'll go to the top view, and we'll deselect these and these. It's important to make sure that you kind of keep track of what you're doing when you're doing CV mods like this. And actually, it looks like I need to go one row over. It needs to be this row and this row. See, I wasn't kidding when I said I didn't practice these. You thought I was making it up. All right, now we can pull this back up, give ourselves a little bit more landing space. All right. So that I feel a little bit better about, because now we're going to have a little bit of space. This is going to be doubled, so it's going to make a little bit more sense like that, right? So I feel pretty okay about that. Maybe we'll even pull this guy and this guy up a little bit more. Line that all up. Now, we can line all of these up. If I pick all of these, we can use Gumball to reline these things all back up. So if I go into the front view, if I want all of these to line up with one or the other of these, I can relocate the gumball to be here, and then I can scale these to 0, and it will flatten all of those to the same spot. And then I can use my little waffle to decide exactly how I want that to come together. See that? So let's do the same thing over here. Let's grab all of these guys. So B, Command drag to get rid of the ones that we don't want to mess with. Go back to front view. I'm going to relocate my gumball to here, and then I'm going to scale to 0. Oops, looks like I got one down here that I don't want. So I'm going to deselect that one. Relocate gumball. Scale to 0. It'll line all those guys back up, and then I can use my C-plane icon to kind of like do the finer sculpting on that. All right, Now, I know I've already got these planes set up, so why don't we go ahead and use them? I'm just going to make them longer so that they go all the way through. And then let's trim all the rest of this off. Then I can just simply go here, transform array polar, 6 objects, and that will finish this thing up. Get rid of these planes. Now, if we're living right, I should be able to grab all this stuff and join it. And show our edges. And it looks like I'm a little off on one of my, unless I didn't join it. So it looks like I'm a little off here. So I can use the match surf command. Actually, I can't use match because it's a trim surface. So let's see why we're off. And it looks like I wasn't exactly perfectly aligned edge to edge. So let's do this a different way. Let's just split this guy in half. Pick one side or the other. We'll just pick this side. Let's mirror this around 0. Join that. Now this should be the same side to side. Now if we transform array polar, it should all line up. Now, there we go. All right. So I wasn't as careful as I needed to be to get these things side to side in order to line up. But I was able to recover from that. All right, so we've got this thing. Let's bring the rest of our stuff back. If everything is going well, we should be able to join those two together. And it did. I'm going to take my curves and just throw them on a layer. I always keep my curves just to, if your clients are anything like mine, they like to make changes. So throw that all there. And then let's go ahead and make the bezel. Nope, which view am I in? Top view, top view. And let's make the little hosel thing down here. And I'm going to do that just with a circle, or with a cylinder. I'm going to just snap this to the end of this, and I'm going to bring it out something like that. And then as far as the direction is concerned, I'm going to change this to none and then use the shift key to bring that out like that. I'm going to just take it and poke it in a little bit because I'm going to Boolean this whole thing together. And then I'm going to do a sub-object selection. Now, if you don't know what sub-object selection is, if you hold down Shift Command and click on a part of a poly surface, this is a poly surface. Shift Command click on a part of a poly surface, you can modify it if I shift drag on this. And I can add a little taper to that thing. Cool things about this. There's a great video called Hello Gumball that Brian James did that will show you all the Gumball superpowers. So let's Boolean these two together. And then I'm going to just throw a variable radius blend on this edge, and I'm going to chain it. Sorry, my voice is misbehaving. Let me mute for a second. All right, little swig of coffee makes it all better. So we'll go ahead and run this, and that's probably a decent amount of blendiness. So we've got our kind of knob. Okay, and we could have spent a little bit more time, focusing on the transition in or out of there, things like that, but it looks like there's a little tangent issue here that we may have wanted to make sure that these points are all lined up. If we wanted to fix that, if I explode this thing, I won't do it on all of it, but I'll just show you what the issue is. So if I go here and I turn these points on, these points, in order for them to be tangent across the center line, have to all be lined up. So we'd have to do a little bit of tangency adjustment here in order to get that perfectly correct. Or if you were really fussy and you wanted to really like nail this down, you could actually cut a slice out of this and then use the blend tool to blend over this. You know, we could do something like this. And I would obviously do this with symmetry and all that stuff, but I'm moving quickly. We would just trim a slice out of this and then use the blend surface. This is my go-to for fixing tangency issues. All right, so now if we looked at this, our tangency issue is gone. See that? So then what I would do is I would just mirror that slice around and do the same thing we did before. All right, so I'm going to back up. I'm going to take that out just so everything joins still. But that would be the fix for that if you were looking to fix that. All right, so the last thing I want to do is I want to break this thing off. I want to break this lens off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift command click this and do a sub-object selection. And I'm going to start pulling on this, and then I'm going to tap option. See how that plus sign shows up? That actually makes a little copy of this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift command click this, and I'm going to start dragging this down and hold down command. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to extrude this into the model just a little bit. See that? See how it added that little piece? So now what I can do is I can take this, click start dragging, hold down command, add a little bit of thickness to that, and then I can just take this thing and tuck it right back in here. And I'm going to scale it just a tiny bit, just to give myself a little bit of clearance in there, so if I printed it, it would fit. And then that way I've got my lens and stuff all set up. Now let's go to wireframe, go to the top view, and just make sure that these things are in position the way we want. It's still sticking out a little far, so I'm going to just bring it in right like that. And I'm going to just leave the tiniest little kissing distance in between here, so I could fit a label or do whatever I wanted in there, right? So that gives me this nice soft little handle. Now, talk about threaded stuff. And threaded stuff, this is one of my favorite tricks. I show this every time I do videos like that have threaded stuff in them. If I go to McMaster-Carr, and anybody who's from outside the United States, if you don't know about McMaster-Carr, McMaster-Carr is like the clearinghouse for all things nuts and bolts. And it's a company in, I think it's Wisconsin or something like that. Anyway, you can see that they have everything that you could possibly imagine as far as industrial supplies and fasteners and pulleys and belts and gears and retaining rings and all the springs and everything. And the cool thing about this is if I pick one of these, right, and I say threaded rods, and I say I want metric, and I say I want a, and I have no idea how big I built this thing. Let's check that first. Let's do a dimension here so we know what size we're dealing with. So it's 3.62 inches. That's pretty massive. So let's bring this down. Let's scale this down significantly. Like that. Actually, it would help if I grabbed everything. Something like that. And then, so that's 1.75. That's still really big. This knob is massive. Let's put it back where we found it. Let's move this back to 0 since I nope. I'll move from here to 0. Let's put it back in 0. All right, now let's measure this and see. I just want to get something that's like mildly reasonable. All right, so that's 3/4 of an inch. So let's go back to McMaster-Carr and let's go back a page and not do metric. We'll do inches because we're in the US and we do dumb things. So we said 3/4 of an inch. So if we come down here and we grab let's grab a 5/8 by 11. We can say we want this thing to be 4 inches long. This is the money right here. Product detail. Anything that has this product detail with this little CAD symbol, click on it, roll down to the bottom, and there's a drop down on here where we can download this thing to our system. There we go. And then we can show this in the Finder. And then we can just drag that from here into Rhino. Oh, no drag and drop, you dog. All right, that's fine. So we'll do file import. And we'll go to downloads, find this, import it. Yes. No, I did not want to scale it. Sorry. Import. I usually, if I'm going to bring millimeter stuff in, I work in millimeters. All right, so there's my threaded rod. And the cool thing about this is, check it out. It's completely watertight. So if I add these objects and I look for naked edges, there are none. It's all watertight, ready to roll, which means I can do this, poke it into my model, and if I'm going to print this for real, this is the coolest thing about this is if I come up here and do a Boolean on this, right? The Boolean, first of all, works really well. These threads are mechanically perfect. So if I print this on a, let's say I print this on a MakerBot that's got some ish factor as far as how accurate the print is, no offense to MakerBot, but PLA printers can only be so accurate. You can run a tap through this to clean these threads out after it gets printed, and this threaded rod will go in just with your fingers. It'll go in perfectly. And so I actually have a file of a bunch of these things, of the metric ones. And when I print stuff that has to be bolted together, I'll build my screw bosses and then I'll punch these things in there and Boolean them out. And then when I print the part, I'll just grab a tap of the correct size and I'll tap all those things out, and you can screw your parts together. They just go together perfectly. The threads are perfect. They're nice and clean. There's no resistance on them. They tighten up nicely. So you never, ever have to model threads ever again. It's all right here. Okay, so that's my McMaster card trick for threads. And the cool thing about this, if you dig through this catalog, it's got nuts and bolts and everything that you could possibly imagine. U-bolts, I-bolts, screw bolts, washers, shims, springs, and all of this stuff is cool because when you download the part and put it in your model, if you build this to use the piece that you've downloaded from here, you can just buy this part straight from them, and by the time the thing's out of the printer, the parts will be in your mailbox, and you can just stick them in there. So if you design these with springs that come from this company, or gears, or anything else that you wanted to do, all of this stuff works because the CAD models are exactly built off of the pieces that they're using. So there's manifolds and pipe fittings and everything you could possibly imagine in here. So I use this pretty exclusively anytime I have to assemble or build anything. How are we doing for questions? Any questions so far? We do like to have these kind of be interactive, so if you have any questions, definitely hit the chat and let me know. All right, so let's take a look at another one. So this is, where are we at, 939? Oh, let's take this guy and stick him on a layer. Move object to this layer, and then let's hide it. So let's turn our, oh, looks like I put the curves and the images on the same layer. Let's fix that. Let's move the image to this layer. There we go. That way we can hide the curves and lock the image. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. Let's build this guy here. I like this one. This is actually part of the level 2 the level 2 class, there's actually an exercise to do this, but we can, building things that are round and seamless like this, you know, you could start with a sphere and possibly deform this and get this shape, but there's actually an easier way to do it. And by the way, the trick for building stuff that has rounded ends on it is to start with the rounded end first and then build off of it, instead of trying to build this, you know, build this object and then figure out a way to put the round end on it. Start with the round end first and then go backwards if you're using the sphere method. But this thing is actually kind of a cool little exercise, because we can do this. Let's start with an ellipse. And I'm going to just drag, hold down Command to extrude this, and then I'm going to Shift Command click and make this a little bit bigger. And then I've got a nice little tapered thing on it, right? So now the trick is to try and figure out, well, how do I model a rounded end on this thing? Well, if I place a couple of points, I'm going to place one at 0, and then I'm going to move it out here, and then I'm going to do it again. Place another point at 0, and then I'm going to take these guys. And I'm just doing it this way because Gumball makes it super easy to place stuff in space and have it be aligned precisely. So I'm going to stick these 2 points kind of out here in space. And we want to make sure and run with history on when we do this. And then we're going to come over here and grab the patch tool. And patch allows us to use edges, curves, points, all sorts of stuff as reference. And if I run this thing, and let's just do it at 10 and 10 with a stiffness of 1. The stiffness setting is, think of it as a sheet of rubber, and a very thin sheet of rubber or a low stiffness rating is going to be really floppy like a balloon, where a high stiffness rating, something like 7, 8, 9, 10, is going to be like a really thick piece of a tire or something like that, and it's going to be harder to bend it. So let's start with something like this and let's preview it and see what we get. And that actually is going to work out pretty well, so let's run it. Now the coolest part about this is because we ran it with history, I can grab this point and I can start adjusting this. So if I want this to be really dramatic, I can do something like that, which makes it for a really nice kind of rounded knob. And then the downside of patch is because it's a sample point thing, if I turn my edges on, there's a very good chance that this and this won't join. So because this is just not accurate enough around the edge. So there's 2 ways to fix this. The first way would be to just grab a loft, right? And just loft from the edge of this thing back to the original curve and run that and then say match the start tangent. That would do it, right? If I get rid of the original, I think I might have gotten rid of the wrong one. That one I want to get rid of. So this is our loft. That should join, and it does. And it looks pretty good. I don't know if you're catching a little, I'm catching a little inflection right on the edge of this. See this? I don't know if you can see that right there and right there. So that's okay, but it's not awesome. So let's do it a different way. Let's go to, the other thing that we can do is we can split by an isoparam, and we can just actually make this, we can make some room in here, and I can blend now between, my blend surface is down here somewhere, there we go. Blend between these two with tangency. That's probably going to be a pretty decent result. That will join. Ooh, it didn't. That's intriguing. Let's try it again. It should have joined. Let's see. That's why we do these live. I make the mistakes so you don't have to. So let's blend between these two. And let's add another shape over here just to have a little bit more control. And let's see if that'll join. No. All right, so this is not a trimmed surface, so I can run match surf on this. And I want it to be tangent, and we'll let it refine. Ooh, needs a lot more. I must be running a super high tolerance on this file. Let me see what my tolerances are. I might have unreasonably high tolerances on this. My units. What's in the other one? Yeah, see, I'm running 0.001 millimeters. That's kind of unreasonable. If you think about that, if you look at what 0.001 millimeters is on a set of calipers for most product design, that's probably a little insane. So I'm going to drop a 0 and go 0.01. Now, Rhino will do this. It's not, it's not like, oh, Rhino's not accurate, it can't do it. It's just the effort that it takes to do that is not useful in most situations. So let's see if this will join. And in this case, it does. Okay, so let's go and take a look at this now. Now this is a much better result of that thing. I'm losing that little inflection that was at that edge. Now, the other way to do this is, if I untrim this, is to do what's called a pipe trim. I want to untrim. Nope. I always get those backwards. Untrim that. The other thing is called a pipe trim, and this is a trick I stole from. Oh, my brain's shut off. James Carruthers. James Carruthers. I was trying to give him a shout out at this because I stole this from him. He used to have these great videos out that were called Form versus Shape, and I learned a lot from them early on in my career. So I was trying to shout him out when I use this. He probably didn't invent it, but that's where I learned it from. So I was trying to give him credit. Plus, he's an incredibly nice guy. So James, if you're out there, props to you. Blend surface from here to here, and what we do is we use the pipe in order to make a really nice gap, which then allows us to make a blend in there to make that nice and smooth. Now, I think my render mesh is probably a little coarse, so let's check that. Yeah, so let me run this smoother and slower, and that'll give us a little bit better display. All right, so that's nice and clean. And if I emap this, I get really nice, clean reflections. See that? So that's a way that we can do like seamless. It's like there's a little mesh artifact right here. Let's adjust the mesh. See that? That little inflection is caused by this mesh polygon. So let's crank this up a little bit. So that goes away now. So you have to make sure that what you're seeing is real and not a mesh artifact. And it looks like there might be a little, if we're being fussy, there might be a little inflection right through here, which means that we might need to give this a little bit more room to run. So maybe we peel this back or whatever. Anyways, but you get the idea. All right. So let's take this guy. Let's throw this on a layer. And I'm going to throw these on the curves. And let's go back to our image and see what else we've got to build. So let's build this guy here. I like this one too because it gives us an opportunity to talk about a different formula for building stuff like this. And then if we have time, maybe I'll jump into this guy up here. So let's look at this guy. And basically there's a formula for building stuff like this, and there's a cool way to do this using deformers in Rhino. So let's jump into that. So I'm going to start with four-sided surface. Like this. And I'm going to just stick this in at the origin. Find its center and move to 0. And then I'm going to change its degree because it's a degree 1 surface right now, so I'm going to make it a degree 3 surface because that is going to give me some points that I can mess with. We'll do points on, and I'm going to grab this direction and this direction, and I'm just going to pull that just a little bit. And what it's going to do is it's just going to give me a little shape to this thing, right? I want to just add a little crown to that thing in both directions. And now what we'll do is we'll go and we'll lay this thing out. And I want this to be, I want it to start, I know the drawing shows this raised like that, but that's easier to do. Let's do this where this edge is tangent to this surface. And the way to do that is I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to come out to here, and then I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. There's my corners, right? I'm always counting corners. And I'm going to bring this up here like this. I'm going to mirror it around 0. And that's the outside of my object, right? That's the first trim. I'm going to join these together. I'm going to copy paste, and I'm going to shift drag on the scale handle to bring this in. This is going to be the upper surface of my part. I'm going to turn the points on, grab these, and I'm going to bring this out and snap them to the end so all these line up. By the way, if you don't have, if your gumball is not snapping, there's a setting for gumball called snappy dragging, which is what you want to enable. And the gumball settings in Mac are, let's see, I think I just can type it. Gumball settings. It's in one of these settings. Might be in the general one. I might have to look that up. I know where it is on the Mac, on the Windows side, but modeling agents. Nope. All right, I'm not going to bore you with me digging through here, but there's a setting. There's a setting in Gumball called snappy dragging, and if we have a bunny tail, oh, duh, it's on the bunny tail. Smooth dragging and snappy dragging. You want to set this to snappy dragging. And what that'll do is that will allow the gumball center to respond to O snaps so you can place it more precisely. All right, so that's that. Now we need to close this off. I'm going to just snap from here to here. And then this piece also has a little subsection in it. And so I'm going to take this and copy paste, shift drag. That's the outside of that. Paste, shift drag. That's the inside of that. Same thing again. I'm going to snap from here to here and then turn the points on for this down here. And gumball, snappy dragging. I'm going to snap it to there. And so now we're set up. We have everything that we need in order to build this thing. And we're going to use shrink trim surface, which is something you might not have seen before, and deformers to do this. So let's go and split this. This is the object we're going to split, and we're going to split it using all of these curves. And I'm going to delete the places where there's going to be gaps, which are these. And then I'm going to go, actually, I went too far. Sorry. I made the same mistake yesterday. Got to do it in 2 pieces. So I'm going to split using, this. And I want to get rid of this first. And if I do this shaded so you can see what's going on. If I turn the points on for this, you can see that it maintains the original points. So if I shrink trim surface, it changes the points now to fit into the bounding box of what this would be. If I were to untrim it, it would just go out to here. But this is the important thing. See how these points are lined up at the end? If I grab these points, leaving these alone, and I go to the front view, and I run a bend deformer, and I don't want to start here because I might break it. I want to start a little bit off that, and I bend this up like this. Check this out. This, if I'm living right, that should join. And it does. So I've maintained my connection here, and I get a nice, even connection out of that. And it looks like because my points moved a little bit, if we're being honest, it looks like my points may have moved a little bit here, which affected my tangency. So let's match surf, and we can do this because we shrank the trim surface. Oh, all right, fine. Let's untrim it. Untrim. There we go. And you see it only untrims to there. So now I can match surf to there, making it tangent. So now it's tangent. Now I can go back up here. I can use this as a trimming object again. And I'm going to just cheat it in just a hair for brevity's sake. There we go. So now that's tangent, nice and lined up, and it's bent up like that. So to put this back together, I'm just going to use a blend surface between these two, set the tangency, and let's do this in shaded view. And then I'm going to just back this off just a tiny little bit. See if I can adjust that and decide how much blend I want in and out of there. Say okay. These ends might not join, but let's give it a shot and see. And it looks like it did. So that gives us a really nice blended little bezel there. So let's go back to the top view. And let's make the next one. So let's take, I'm going to extract this surface for now. And then I'm going to split it using these curves. And I'm going to do the same thing. Delete this. Pick this surface. Shrink. Turn its points on. And I'm bending the points, not the surface. If I bend the surface, it'll still work, but it will rebuild. And I don't want it to rebuild. I want it to stay nice and light. And in this case, I think we did a better job not messing with this second set of points here. So this should join nicely. And then we'll just go in here and do a blend surface, which is I can never find in my list. There we go. Same thing we did before. Now, if this blend is fitting too tightly, if it's not doing what you want, you just need to give it more room. These curves just need to be farther apart, right? But in this case, I'm actually going to call that pretty decent. I'm going to say that's working. So let's join that up and see how we did. And in that case, everything's joined, which means it's watertight. And we've got a really nice little bezel. Now this is cool because this could be a switch, right? Your finger could come in and pull this way. Or if we flip it over, this could be an intake for a motorcycle. You know, if the back of this was open, this could be an air intake. This could be a little secondary scoop. This is how I do hood scoops on cars, like if I was doing muscle cars and stuff. This is how I do scoops on cars. Super easy. And I like the bend trick because as long as you're bending the points, it keeps the surfaces all nice and easy and cool to deal with, right? So let's throw another surface up here. We're almost done. I'm only going to do one more. You guys are like, how long is this going to last? So let's take and throw our curves up here. And then let's build this guy. This guy actually I did yesterday and was kind of fun. And I did it with point editing, which was a little bit different than you may have think about doing one of these things. So let's go to the front view. Let's draw this out. And I'm going to start at 0, not at O. I'm going to start at 0. And I'm going to draw out 1. There's my corner. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to use the origin as my center point. So I'm going to bring this up to here like this. And then I'll draw a little step in. And then I'm going to use the same trick I did before, which is just to mirror this guy so that I've got something to aim for with my 3-point arc. And then again, oops, got to pick the right one. Start, and there we go. And then the cool thing about this is just the center point's always lined up in the middle. So you know you're not going to get like some weird, bulging nonsense. And then we'll just simply trim this off. Just make a line through here. Delete that. All right, let's join this up. And let's mirror it. Join that up. And then let's go ahead and revolve this thing. Okay. So we've got this little barrel shape, and then we need to get this little piece to stick out of it. So I'm actually going to rotate this 180 because I don't want to deal with the seam. This is the seam down here, and I don't want that. So I'm going to extract this like we did before, and I'm going to rebuild it. And I'm going to rebuild it. That's probably a little crazy. Let's do, I don't know, let's do 30. And 12 is probably plenty, so let's rebuild it. And then let's turn on the points. And if I were to just roll through here and just take a slice through this, like, let's start, this is kind of the center point. And let's go to the top view, and I'm going to deselect this side, because I only want to mess with one side. And watch this. Boop. There it is. Now, if I wanted this tighter, I would deselect this row and pull that up. And then I would scale these out a little bit to make that a little sharper. Like that. And then if I go to the front view or the right-hand view, I might scale these in a little bit. See if there's any weird things going on. That's I kind of dig that. That makes kind of a cool little shape. These edges are a little sharp, and if I wanted to de-sharpen them, I would come in here and probably mess with these guys a little bit. And I would want to do that on both sides, so I would want to get both of these. So I would want to get this guy over here too. But check out what you can do with this. So if I were to bring these guys in together like this, and then tuck them in, look at what I can do. How cool that is. There's so much stuff you can do with CV sculpting. And if I even add these guys, We might even be able to do something. Bring these guys in a little bit. Look at that. Kind of like that a lot. Maybe I don't even want to poke the through hole through that. Maybe I just want to leave it like that. That's really kind of cool. It's got a nice little finger hook on it. Maybe this is a little, maybe that's a little sharp, maybe not. I don't know. Let's add a few little details to it. Let's do a line from the center. And let's start at 0. And just drag out like this. Let's grab that. And let's do 1 there. Option tap. Gotta do some wireframe so I can see what I'm doing. Let's do 1 here. I could use an array for this and actually get them positioned perfectly, but as a concept model, I think I'm okay with it just being a little fudgy. And then let's project this onto that. And then let's just pipe them. And I love the pipe that has the rounded ends on it. And I can never find it. So let's do this. Pipe. I don't know why I have such problems with finding stuff in Rhino, in Mac Rhino, but I actually want the rounded ends one. Pipe. Oh, now I gotta find it. It's in here. There it is. Pipe round caps. So let's pick this guy and go something like that. If I just repeat the pipe and hit enter, helps if I pick the right one. I'm going to pre-pick these curves. Watch this. And pipe, round caps, and then I'm going to just hit, ooh, the one before, the setting before. All right. Make me look dumb, will ya? I'm going to pre-pick all of these. Pipe round caps. Let's go 0.1. Do them all at the same time. And then we can just take this guy and Boolean it in. Boop. And that gives us our cool little detail. All right, now let's bring back this guy. And these two kind of could even work together if I were, oops, let's go the other way. And if I were to take this and join it all together again, there we go. And shift drag scale this thing down. This could even fit nicely in here and be like a cool little, you know, this could be a little bezel for this thing. Like that. Have a cool little control system built up in here. And we just probably build a secondary pocket down here for this thing to sit in, or just Boolean it out, or whatever. But you know, like very quickly, we can just build this cool little toggle. It probably would go the other way around because the finger would go in there, but unless this was a push button type of thing. But anyways, technicalities. But now that once you have this thing, now we can play with it, make, you know, stuff like this, and make this cool little trigger panel. You know, maybe that's in a spaceship or something like that, or window switches for a car or something. All right. So we're about 10 o'clock. We're a little over 10 o'clock, and I think that's probably where I'd like to to go for this. Any questions on that so far? Any questions of anything else that you want to see, or anything that you saw so far that you want to ask a question about? If not, I think we'll call it a day, and I'll say thanks for coming. And these videos all get posted on Vimeo, by the way. Rhino has a Vimeo page, and so make sure and check that out. And that's where all this stuff is going to live if you want to go through it yourself. All right. So if there's no questions, I'll let you roll. If not, I'll hang out for just a second. If you want to hit something in the chat, we can go from there. All right. It's like a quiet bunch today. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Like I said, we do these about once a month. So if you liked what you saw, you can probably find another one next month. If you don't like what you saw, let me know. I'm at Kyle at McNeil.com. Oops, not Mick McNeil, just McNeil. Only one. And then that's my business, my consulting business email, and that's my consulting business webpage if you want to take a look at that. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll let you go. Thank you for coming. I always appreciate having some audience members. It makes it a lot more interesting than just talking to myself in a room. So I appreciate you coming, and I will catch up with you next time. Thanks, everybody.